The sack hit the dirt before Etta Wynn could catch it. Flour burst through a split seam and dusted her boots white. A tin of tea rolled beneath the hitching rail. 2 bars of soap stopped beside Amos Rusk's polished black shoe. He did not bend to pick them up. "Some hands ought not be trusted with living things," he said, loud enough for the whole store porch to hear. "Not after what happened to my wife." The talk along Red Willow's main street went thin and still. Etta stood with one hand closed around 3 copper coins. She could feel every face turned toward her. Once, those people had called for her when a baby came early or a fever climbed after dark. Now no one moved. Amos nudged the soap with his toe. "Best take your things and go." Etta crouched without answering. Her skirt brushed the flour. She reached for the tea tin, but another hand got there first. It belonged to a man she had never seen. He was broad through the shoulders, with sawdust caught in the seams of his coat and a pale scar near his jaw. A little girl stood behind him holding a wooden doll by one arm. The man picked up the tin, wiped it on his sleeve, and placed it in Etta's basket. Then he gathered the soap. Amos looked down at him. "You knew here." "Got in yesterday." "Then you don't know who you're helping." The stranger lifted the torn flour sack. "I know somebody dropped her goods." "I did more than drop them." "Yes," the man said, "I noticed." A few men near the water trough looked away. No one laughed. Amos was not a man people laughed at unless he had already started. He owned more cattle than any man for 50 miles. He held notes on 3 farms, 2 shops, and most of the wagons that hauled beef south. His money had a way of standing in a room even when he did not. Etta rose with the basket against her hip. "You don't need to do that," she told the stranger. "I'm near finished." "I said you don't need to." His hand stopped. For one breath, Etta thought he might argue. Men often did when they believed kindness gave them the right to decide how much of it a woman had to take. Instead, he placed the last bar of soap in her basket and stood. "All right," he said. "Nothing more." That almost unsettled her more. There is a kind of shame that does not come from doing wrong. It comes from being named guilty so many times that silence starts to feel safer than truth. Have you ever walked away because speaking would only feed the people who had already judged you? Tell us in the comments, and subscribe if you believe quiet hearts still deserve to be heard. Amos turned toward the store door as if the matter were settled. Etta stepped past him. She did not hurry. That was important. She had learned that running gave people a story to tell, and Red Willow already had enough stories about her. The stranger's little girl watched Etta cross the street. Her hair had been cut unevenly at the chin, as though someone had tried to manage it with sewing shears and poor light. She wore one red mitten and one brown one. The wooden doll had no face. Etta kept walking. At the far end of town stood the old stage stop, empty now except for Etta and the mice that came in when the nights turned cold. The coach line had changed its route 3 years before. Travelers no longer knocked after midnight asking for coffee, blankets, or a fresh team. That suited her. She rented the place from a widow in Santa Fe who cared only that the coins arrived twice a year. The roof leaned over the back room. 2 windows rattled when the wind came from the east. One porch board had been loose since spring. Etta knew how to fix all 3 things. She simply had not. She entered through the side door and set the basket on the long counter where passengers once bought tickets. Flour had worked into the weave. She brushed it away with slow strokes. 1 sack. 2 soaps. Tea. Lamp oil. Needles. Nothing missing. She placed each thing in its proper spot. The work steadied her until she reached the small brown bottle at the bottom of the basket. It was empty. She had carried it to the store by mistake. Etta turned it in her fingers. The faded label had peeled off long ago, but she knew what had once been inside. Laudanum, just enough to dull the pain of a woman who had labored too long. Amos's wife had bitten down on a folded cloth, while Etta begged him to ride for the doctor. He had refused. The storm was bad, he said. The doctor charged too much, he said. His wife had delivered 2 children before and would deliver 1 more. By sunrise, both mother and baby were gone. Etta set the bottle in the drawer and closed it hard. The sound carried through the empty room. She stood with her palm on the drawer front until her breathing settled. Then someone knocked. 3 soft taps. Etta waited. The knock came again. She opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. The stranger from town stood on the porch. His hat was in his hands. The little girl was beside him, staring at the loose board beneath her boots. "I brought this," he said. He held out a small cloth sack. Etta looked at it but did not reach. "Flour," he said. "Storekeeper filled a new one after you left." "I paid for what I bought." He said Amos paid for what he ruined. "Then give it to Amos." The man glanced back toward town. "I would rather not." "That makes 2 of us." The corner of his mouth moved, but he did not turn it into a smile. "My name is Caleb Hale," he said. "This is my daughter, June." The girl lifted the wooden doll a little. It might have been a greeting. Etta kept one hand on the door. "What do you want, Mr. Hale?" "To return your flour." "People do not walk half a mile to return flour." "New people do foolish things." June looked up at him. "You said it was the decent thing." Caleb rubbed a thumb along the edge of his hat. "I did say that." Etta studied him through the narrow opening. Sawdust marked his cuffs. A thin curl of wood clung to one boot. "You work with lumber." "Wagon wheels, axles when I must, chairs when the wheel trade is slow." "The old cooper's shed is empty." "That is where we're staying." "In the shed." "In the room behind it." "That room has 1 stove and no proper latch." "I found the stove." "And the latch." "Still looking." June leaned close to the gap. "Pa says he can fix anything made of wood." Caleb looked down at her. "I said most things." "You said anything." "I was trying to impress you." "It didn't work." Etta almost smiled. The feeling reached her face and stopped before it became visible. She unhooked the chain and opened the door enough to take the flour. Caleb handed it over without letting his fingers touch hers. "Thank you," she said, because refusing the words would have required more effort than giving them. He put on his hat. "Good day, Miss Wynn." June stayed where she was. Her eyes had moved past Etta toward the long room, the old benches, and the black iron stove. Were there really stagecoaches here? Once. With robbers. Not inside. Did people sleep on those benches? When every bed was taken. June considered that. Pa snores, I might come sleep here. June. It's true. Caleb's face reddened beneath the cold. Etta shifted the sack against her hip. The benches are harder than they look. So is the floor behind the cooper's shed, June said. Caleb touched 2 fingers to the brim of his hat. We should go before she rents us a room out of pity. I don't rent rooms. Then we'll be safe. They turned toward town. June stepped on the loose porch board. It tipped under her boot. She fell sideways with one hand reaching for the rail. A sharp nail caught her palm. The girl cried out. Caleb dropped to his knees. Blood ran over June's small wrist and spotted the dust at his boots. He wrapped his hand around hers, but the cut opened wider beneath his thumb. Pa, June whispered. Etta did not move. For a moment she saw another room, another hand, Another man looking at her as though she had all the answers when she had already used everyone she knew. Caleb raised his head. He did not ask what the town had said. He did not ask whether Amos had been right. He held his frightened daughter close and looked straight at Etta. "Tell me what to do." The old stage stop went quiet around them. Etta looked at the blood, then at the drawer she had slammed shut. Her hands had begun to shake. She closed them once. Then she opened the door. "Bring her inside," she said. Caleb carried June to the nearest bench. Etta shut the door, slid the bolt, and crossed to the washstand. Her hands still shook, but only until she poured water into the basin. Then the old order returned. "Hold her wrist above her heart," she said. Caleb did it at once. Not so tight. His grip eased. June sat pale against his chest. Tears ran down her face, though she was trying hard not to cry. Etta knelt in front of her. "Look at me, June." The girl did. "This will sting." "How much?" "Enough that I won't lie about it." June swallowed. "All right." Etta washed the cut. The child sucked in a breath and buried her face against Caleb's coat. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he did not tell Etta to hurry. He did not reach across and take over. He simply held his daughter still. The nail had torn the skin beneath June's thumb. It looked worse than it was. Etta cleaned it, pressed a folded cloth against it, and waited until the bleeding slowed. Her fingers knew the work. That frightened her more than if they had forgotten. Caleb watched her face, not her hands. "She'll keep the hand?" he asked. June pulled back. "Pa. You were wondering too." "I was not." Etta wrapped the palm with a clean strip of linen. "She'll keep it," she said, "but she must keep it clean. No mud, no lifting, and no helping your father with wheels for a few days." June frowned. "I don't help with wheels." "You hand me nails," Caleb said. "I hand you the wrong nails." "You do it with confidence." The girl's mouth twitched. Etta tied the cloth and sat back. The knot was small and firm. She had tied thousands like it. For burns. For cuts. For women who gripped bed frames until their knuckles split. She looked away first. Caleb reached into his coat. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing." "You used cloth and spirits." "I said nothing." Etta rose too fast. The room tilted, then settled. Caleb studied her for one quiet moment. Then he put the coins away. "All right." Again, no argument. He lifted June from the bench. At the door, he stopped beside the loose porch board. He pressed his boot against it and watched it rise. "I'll fix that." "No. It cut my daughter." "The nail cut your daughter." "The board introduced them." "I can fix my own porch." "I believe you." "Then leave it." Caleb nodded and took June back toward town. Etta waited until they were out of sight before she sat on the bench. Her knees had gone weak. On the floor lay one small drop of blood. She wiped it away with the same cloth 3 times. The next morning, Etta found the porch board fixed. No wagon stood nearby. The old plank had been lifted, turned, and set tight with 2 new nails. A small curl of fresh wood rested beside it. Etta picked it up. She walked to the cooper's shed before breakfast. Caleb had both doors open. A wagon wheel stood against the wall, stripped of its iron rim. June sat on an upturned crate with her bandaged hand in her lap. Caleb looked up from his work. "Morning. You fixed my porch." He glanced at June. "Did I?" "She told you not to," June said. "I recall." "You did it anyway." "I did." Etta held up the wood shaving. "Why?" Caleb set down his plane. Because my girl bled on that board. She would have bled less if she watched where she stepped. She gets that from me. I am not asking for jokes. No, his face grew plain. You helped her, I fixed the board, I thought that made us even. I did not ask to be even. I know. Then why say it? Because you look like you might throw the board through my window if I call it kindness. June nodded, she does. Etta looked from the girl to Caleb. He had flour on one sleeve. He must have tried to make breakfast. A black mark ran along his thumb where iron had rubbed the skin. She had come ready to be angry. It was harder with ordinary things in the way. Her bandage needs changing tonight, Etta said. Caleb nodded, we'll come by. No, I will show you now. She stepped into the shed and taught him how to wash the cut and wrap it without pulling the cloth too tight. Caleb listened as though each word mattered. When his hands moved wrong, she corrected them. He did not take offense. June watched both of them. Pa makes knots too big, she said. I have large hands. You make large mistakes. I have those too. Etta finished the bandage and handed the loose end to Caleb. Again. He untied it and tried. The second knot held. After that, Caleb began appearing at the stage stop in small ways. Never long enough to call a visit. He returned a hammer Etta had not loaned him because it had rolled beneath the shed wall and looked like hers. He brought a cracked stool and asked whether she wanted it mended before he used the wood for kindling. He left a small sack of coffee after learning the store had sold her the bitter grounds from the bottom of the barrel. Each time Etta tried to refuse. Each time he found a practical reason. The stool belonged to the stage stop. The coffee was payment for checking June's hand. The hammer had her initials cut into the handle. Etta could argue with kindness. Practical reasons were more difficult. June came with him whenever school let out. She sat near the stove and asked questions about the old stage line. How many horses pulled a coach? Did passengers ever lose their boots? Had anyone been born in the back room? Etta answered the first two. She pretended not to hear the third. A week passed. June's hand healed clean. On the morning Etta removed the last bandage, Caleb stood near the washstand with a cup of coffee in each hand. He had remembered that she took hers without sugar. He set it beside her without comment. Etta checked June's palm. You'll have a scar. June looked pleased. Will it be a large one? No. Can I say it was? You can say what you please. Most people do. Caleb looked into his cup. Etta knew he was hiding a smile. She let him. They sat at the old ticket counter while June drew horses on scrap paper. Caleb's shoulder was close enough that Etta could feel the warmth of him through his coat. She moved her chair an inch away. Not two. Outside, the church bell rang 10 times. The last strike came late because the rope had been loose for years. Caleb looked toward town. Rusk came to see me yesterday. Etta set down her cup. What did he want? He has 6 freight wagons needing new rims. That is good work. It is. Then take it. He said the work comes with advice. Etta waited. Caleb rubbed his thumb across the cup handle. He said decent people would think better of me if I stopped walking out here. The room felt larger after that. Etta folded June's, used bandage into a small square. Amos is right about one thing, she said. People will talk. They already do. You have a daughter to raise. I noticed. She needs a place here. So do I. Then do not make trouble before you have earned one. Caleb's eyes stayed on her. Is that what you think I'm doing? I think you are new. New people mistake stubbornness for courage. And old people mistake fear for good sense. The words landed between them. Caleb's face changed at once. He knew he had gone too far. Etta stood and took the cups to the basin. You should go. Etta. You should take the wagon work. He rose slowly. June looked up from her drawing. Are we leaving? Yes, Caleb said. At the door he paused. I'm sorry. Etta kept her back to him. He did not add an excuse. For the next 3 days, Caleb did not come to the stage stop. Etta told herself she was relieved. She swept the front room. She counted lamp wicks. She patched a curtain and turned the mattress in the back room. At noon each day, she found herself listening for June's boots on the porch. Nothing came. On the 4th evening, a rider stopped outside after dark. Etta saw the shape through the curtain and reached for the iron poker beside the stove. The knock was light. Not Caleb's. When Etta opened the door, a young woman stood beneath the lamp with a wool shawl pulled over her hair. One hand held it closed. The other rested low against the roundness beneath her dress. Etta knew her at once. Lydia Rusk. Amos's daughter looked back toward town before stepping closer. My father cannot know I came. Etta did not open the door wider. You should go home. Lydia's fingers tightened over her belly. I can't. Her breath caught, not with pain, with fear. Then she looked Etta straight in the face. I need to know if my mother called for you before she died. Lydia stood under the porch lamp with one hand beneath her child. Etta looked past her. Main Street lay quiet, but Amos kept men in the bunkhouse behind his home. A woman in a pale shawl would be easy to notice if anyone cared to look. Come in, Etta said. Lydia slipped through the door. Etta shut it and pulled the curtain across the glass. The young woman remained near the stove. When is the baby due? Etta asked. 6 weeks, maybe 5. Who is attending you? Mrs. Pritchard. Etta knew the name. A ranch wife with 7 children and confidence enough for 14. Then why are you here? Lydia lowered her head. Because she says pain is punishment for fear, and because my first baby came wrong. Etta went still. I lost him, Lydia said, 2 years ago. I heard. Father said it was God's will. Etta pulled out a chair. Sit down. Lydia did. Her breath shook as she removed her shawl. Now ask your question again, Etta said. My mother, did she call for you? Yes. The answer came plain. Etta had carried it too long to dress it up. Lydia's eyes filled. Father said you arrived late. I arrived before midnight. He said you had been drinking. I had not. He said you refused to send for help. Etta's hand closed around the chair across from her. I asked your father 3 times to fetch Dr. Bell. The last time, your mother asked him herself. Lydia covered her mouth. Why didn't he go? She whispered. He said the roads were too wet. He said the doctor charged too much. He said your mother had done this before. She had me and my brothers. Yes. What happened? Etta sat across from her. The child would not turn. Your mother grew weak. I did what I knew. It was not enough. The words scraped on the way out. Lydia cried without making a sound. She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. Did she blame you? No. Did she say anything about me? Etta remembered the low lamp and rain striking the roof. Amos had paced in the kitchen because he could not bear the sounds from the bedroom. She told me you were stubborn, Etta said. She said it like she was proud. Lydia gave one broken laugh. Then she pressed both hands to her belly. Etta rose at once, pain. No, he moved. He. I think so. Etta waited until Lydia's shoulders loosened. You should not come here alone again, she said. Will you help me? The old stage stop seemed to hold its breath. Etta lifted the kettle, though it did not need lifting. You have Mrs. Pritchard. I don't want her. Your father will never allow me through his door. Then I won't have the baby in his house. Etta set the kettle down. Lydia watched her with the same fear Caleb had worn when June's hand bled, but there was hope beneath it, the dangerous kind, the kind that asked another person to become who they used to be. I am not a midwife anymore, Etta said. You still knew what to do for June. A cut is not a birth. You answered every question I asked tonight. Answers are not the same as hands. Lydia looked down at her stomach. I don't trust Mrs. Pritchard. And you trust me. My mother did. That struck deeper than accusation would have. Etta poured water and moved a chair nearer the stove. I will examine you, she said, nothing more. Lydia nodded quickly. The child's position felt sound. The heartbeat was strong beneath Etta's ear. Lydia was thin but not weak, frightened but listening. Etta asked about bleeding, sleep, food, and the pains that came at night. Lydia answered each question. When it was done, Etta helped her sit up. The baby is well. Lydia closed her eyes. But you need more food, Etta said. Eggs, beans, meat when you can get it. Father says women eat too much when they carry. Your father has never carried anything heavier than his own opinion. Lydia stared at her. Etta looked away. That was unkind. It was true. Boots sounded on the porch. Lydia turned white. The knock came once. Etta, Caleb called. Relief came so fast that it embarrassed her. She opened the door a narrow width. Caleb held a covered bowl. June stood beside him, fighting sleep. We brought stew, he said. June said you forget supper. I said you might, June corrected. Caleb saw Lydia behind Etta. His eyes moved to the shawl, the curved belly, and the fear on her face. He asked no questions. I can come back, he said. No, Etta opened the door wider. I need you to walk Miss Rusk home. Lydia stood. He cannot, father knows him. He knows everyone, Caleb said, but he does not know every back path. I don't want trouble for you. Caleb handed the bowl to Etta. Trouble rarely waits for permission. The words from their last meeting stood between them, but they no longer had sharp edges. Take the wash behind the church, Etta said. Stay below the cottonwoods until you reach the Rusk pasture. Caleb nodded. June peered at Lydia's stomach. Is the baby awake? Very awake. Does it kick? Often. June considered this. That seems rude. For the first time that night, Lydia smiled without pain in it. Caleb walked her out. June started after him, but Etta touched her shoulder. You stay here. June looked up. With you. Until your father returns. The girl came inside, as if she had been invited every evening of her life. Caleb paused at the porch step. Thank you. Etta frowned. For what? Letting her stay. Then he and Lydia disappeared into the dark. June uncovered the stew, beans, beef, and onions. Pa made it, she said. Did he? I cut the onion. With which hand? The good one. Etta placed 2 bowls on the counter. They ate without talking much. June swung her boots beneath the bench. Etta found herself watching the child's healed hand whenever she lifted her spoon. Caleb returned before the bowls were empty. She made it inside, he said. No one saw us. Etta handed him the 3rd bowl. He sat but did not eat right away. Are you angry with me? He asked. June looked between them. This is not a conversation for a child, Etta said. I know what angry means, June replied. Caleb took a bite. I was wrong the other day. You apologized. I did not say why. Etta wiped the table where no mark remained. You were trying to keep us from paying for your trouble, he said. I acted as though you were only afraid. She stopped wiping. I don't know all that happened here, but I know a person can be careful for good reason. Caleb lowered his voice. My wife died of fever when June was 3. Afterward, people brought food and advice, mostly advice. They told me when to sell the shop, when to marry again, how long June ought to cry. June leaned against his arm. I left because every street knew the worst thing that had happened to us, he said. I wanted one place where we could enter before our grief did. Etta looked at him. He did not ask for her story. He simply picked up his spoon again. Plain understanding can be a greater kindness than rescue. It leaves room for a wounded person to stand without being pulled or pushed. That quiet room is why stories like this are told here. After supper, Caleb washed the bowls. Etta dried them. June fell asleep across 2 benches, her wooden doll beneath her chin. Caleb glanced toward her. She likes it here. She likes asking questions. She asks fewer when she feels safe. Etta folded the cloth. The loose latch on the back window clicked in the wind. Caleb heard it. May I? She hesitated, then handed him the tool box. He worked without speaking. Etta held the lamp while he tightened the plate and shaved a thin edge from the frame. His shoulder brushed hers once. Neither moved away at once. When the latch closed cleanly, Caleb tested it twice. There, he said. Etta ran her thumb across the repaired wood. You take payment in stew now. Coffee will do. You already bring the coffee. Then I have made a poor bargain. This time she smiled. It was small and gone quickly, but Caleb saw it. He had the sense not to mention it. He lifted June into his arms. At the door, Etta said, Caleb. He turned. Amos offered you work. Yes. Did you take it? No. You need the money. I do. Then why refuse? Because he wanted to buy more than wheels. Caleb stepped onto the porch with June sleeping against his chest. Down the road, a lantern moved near the cottonwoods. 1 lantern became 2. Then 3. Men were coming from the direction of the Rusk house. Caleb shifted June higher and looked at Etta. A voice carried through the dark. Miss Wynn. Amos Rusk had learned where his daughter had been. Amos Rusk stopped at the edge of the porch light. 2 ranch hands came behind him. One carried a lantern. The other kept his thumbs hooked in his belt. Amos looked first at Caleb, then at June asleep against his shoulder. At last he looked at Etta. My daughter was here. It was not a question. Etta stood inside the open doorway. She was. What did you say to her? The truth. Amos's jaw tightened. Caleb shifted June higher. This is between you and Miss Wynn. Amos turned toward him. You have been in town less than 2 weeks. Long enough to know when a woman is being cornered on her own porch. One of the ranch hands glanced away. Amos stepped closer. The boards gave a small creak beneath his weight. You refused my wagon work, he said to Caleb. I did. Men with children ought to think harder before they refuse honest money. Money can be honest, the terms were not. Amos let the silence sit. Then he looked at Etta again. You filled Lydia's head with poison. I answered what she asked. You told her I let her mother die. Etta's fingers closed around the edge of the door. No, she said, you did that part yourself. The ranch hand with the lantern lowered his eyes. Amos's face changed. Not much. His mouth simply lost what little softness it had carried. Careful. I was careful that night, Etta said. I measured every drop. I watched every breath. I asked you for the doctor until there was no time left to ask. Caleb stayed beside her. He did not touch her. He did not step in front of her. That mattered. Amos pointed toward town. You have lived here because people allowed it. I pay rent. You live on the edge of Red Willow and trade with Red Willow people. Don't mistake a key for belonging. The words found their mark. Caleb saw it. His eyes moved toward her, but he did not answer for her. Etta straightened. Take your men and go. My daughter will not come here again. That is for Lydia to decide. She is my daughter. She is a grown woman carrying a child. Amos stepped onto the porch. Caleb moved then. Only half a step. Enough. Amos looked at him. You plan to fight me while holding a sleeping girl. No. Then move. No. June stirred against Caleb's shoulder. Her eyes opened slowly. She saw Amos and pulled closer to her father's neck. Amos noticed. Something cold passed over his face. You are making a poor name for yourself, Hale. Caleb looked down at his daughter, then back at him. A name is only useful if you can live inside it. Amos gave a dry laugh. Pretty words don't feed a child. Neither does fear. For one moment, Etta thought Amos might strike him. Instead, he stepped back. To both of you, he said, this ends tonight. He turned and walked into the dark. The ranch hands followed. The 3 lanterns moved toward town until the cottonwoods swallowed them. Caleb waited a while before speaking. Are you all right? No. He nodded as if that were a full answer. June rubbed her eyes. Is Mr. Rusk angry? Yes, Caleb said. At us. At me mostly. Etta looked at him. Do not make that easier than it is. He met her eyes. Then June whispered, Can we stay here tonight? Caleb opened his mouth. Etta answered first. The back room has a bed. Both of them looked at her. One night, she said. It is too dark to walk a sleepy child across town. Caleb's expression softened, but he did not thank her in a way that made the offer heavy. He carried June inside. The back room smelled of clean linen and old pine. Etta had turned the mattress only days before, without knowing why. Now she spread a quilt across it. June sat on the edge, while Caleb pulled off her boots. Pa snores, she warned. So I've heard, Etta said. Caleb looked wounded. I am surrounded by slander. June lay down with the wooden doll under her chin. Within minutes, her breathing went slow. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching her. I can sleep on the front bench. There are 2 chairs by the stove. I've slept in worse. So have I. It does not make the bench soft. He followed Etta into the main room. She poured the last of the coffee. It was bitter, but neither complained. They sat across from each other at the old ticket counter. For a while, the only sound was the stove. Then Caleb said, You should know something. Etta waited. The owner of the Cooper shed is Amos's cousin. She looked into her cup. He came by this morning, Caleb continued. Said the room was no longer available after the end of the week. You knew this before you came tonight. Yes. And you still refused Amos's work. Yes. Etta set down her cup. You have June to think of. Then think better. His face stayed calm, but something in it hardened. I watched my wife spend her last year saying yes to people because we needed their help. Yes to work that paid too little. Yes to a landlord who entered without knocking. Yes to relatives who spoke about her as though she were already gone. He rubbed his palms together. I told myself I was protecting my family. Mostly, I was teaching June that fear got the final word. Etta looked toward the back room. You cannot eat pride. No. You cannot burn it for heat. No. You cannot put a roof made of it over a child. Caleb leaned forward. But I can choose what she sees when a powerful man tells me to help him harm someone. The words left Etta with nowhere easy to look. So she reached for the coffee pot and filled his cup, though it was already half full. Caleb looked at the rising coffee but said nothing. After a moment he asked, "Did you mean what you said about the back room?" "For tonight. I meant that you used to rent rooms." Etta wiped a drop from the counter. The stage line stopped coming. That was not my question. No. He waited. She could have sent him to the bench. She could have ended the talk. Instead, she said, I kept travelers once, meals too. A clean bed cost 20 cents, more if a man complained. How much more? Enough to improve his manners. Caleb smiled. The room felt different with the sound of it. Less empty. At dawn, June woke before both of them. Etta found her kneeling beside a trunk in the back room. The lid stood open. Folded sheets filled one side. Old baby cloths lay on the other. June held one small cap in her good hand. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I was looking for my doll. Etta took the cap. It had yellowed along the edge. She had sewn it years ago for a child whose mother had been too poor to buy one. Put your boots on, Etta said. June obeyed. Etta closed the trunk but did not lock it. They ate corn cakes with molasses. Caleb repaired a hinge on the back door while June swept crumbs into a crooked pile. The church bell began ringing. Not the slow call for worship. 3 hard strikes. A pause. 3 more. Caleb set down his screwdriver. What does that mean? Town meeting, Etta said. A boy came running along the road. He stopped at the porch, bent over, and pulled air into his lungs. Miss Wynn, he said, Mr. Rusk says everybody is to come. Mr. Rusk does not ring the church bell. He does today. The boy looked at Caleb. Says it concerns the stage stop and the wheel shop. He ran back toward town. Caleb watched him go. Etta began stacking the breakfast plates. You should take June and leave by the south road. No. This is not courage, it is poor planning. Then we will plan better on the walk. She turned on him. You have already lost your room. And you may lose this place whether I go or not. Etta's hand stopped. Caleb put on his coat, then helped June into hers. He did not tell Etta what to do. He opened the door and waited. From Red Willow came the bell again. 3 strikes. A pause. 3 more. Etta looked around the old stage stop, at the repaired latch, the tight porch board, the 3rd cup drying beside the basin. Then she took her shawl from its peg. The walk into town felt longer than half a mile. People were already gathering outside the church. Ranchers stood near the steps. Shopkeepers filled the walkway. Women held baskets they had forgotten to carry home. Amos stood beneath the bell tower. Beside him was the widow's local agent, a narrow man named Tully with a paper folded in his hand. Etta saw the paper and understood. Amos had not come to frighten her in the dark. He had come to remove her in daylight. Caleb stopped beside her. June slipped her hand into Etta's. The child did it without asking. Etta looked down at their joined hands. Then Amos raised his voice. Now that Miss Wynn has arrived, we can begin. Amos waited until the crowd had gone quiet. Then he nodded to Mr. Tully. The narrow man unfolded the paper in his hand. He cleared his throat twice, though everyone could already hear him. "The owner of the old stage property has accepted an offer to sell," he said. "Miss Wynn must leave the building within 10 days. A murmur moved through the crowd. Etta kept hold of June's hand. "Who made the offer?" Caleb asked. Tully looked at Amos. That was answer enough. Amos adjusted one cuff. "The stage stop sits on useful ground. My cattle wagons need a proper holding yard." "You have fields on 3 sides of town," Etta said. "And I paid for them. I have paid my rent." "No one said you had not." Amos spoke like a man, explaining weather to a child. "This is business." Caleb stepped forward. "You decided to buy it after Lydia visited her." "I have considered the land for years." "You considered it last night." Amos's eyes settled on him. "And you have 7 days to leave the cooper's shed." The crowd stirred again. Caleb did not look surprised. Etta did. She turned toward him. "You said the end of the week." The landlord changed his mind. "When?" "This morning." "You knew before we walked here?" "Yes." "And said nothing?" "There was already enough to carry." Etta released June's hand. The small loss of warmth felt larger than it should have. Amos watched them both. He had always known how to wait until people began hurting each other without his help. Tully folded the paper. "That is the full notice," he said. "There is no need for a disturbance." A woman near the church steps whispered to her neighbor. A man by the water pump stared at his boots. No one spoke for Etta. They had come to her in darkness once. They had knocked on her door with sick children, burned hands, and women whose pains had begun too soon. Some of them stood in the crowd now. Etta recognized each face. Mrs. Cole had gripped Etta's arm while her second son was born. Mr. Merritt had cried when Etta lowered his daughter's fever. The storekeeper's wife had once sent a pie because Etta had sat beside her through a long night. Not one of them looked at Amos. Etta's throat tightened. She had believed she no longer needed anything from these people. That had been easier when she stayed half a mile away and saw them one at a time. Standing before all of them was different. Amos lifted his voice. "Red Willow has been patient. Miss Wynn was allowed to remain despite the pain she caused my family. Now she has begun drawing my daughter into her bitterness." "That is not true," Etta said. "Lydia came to you in secret. She came because she was frightened." "You made her frightened." "No, you did." Amos's face hardened. "Caleb moved beside Etta. She told you to fetch a doctor." Amos looked at him slowly. "You were not there." "No." "Then keep your mouth closed." Caleb's hand stayed loose at his sides. "I was not there," he said, "but I have watched you punish her for speaking of it." "You have watched nothing. You came here with an empty pocket and a child you cannot properly house." June moved closer to Etta. Caleb's face went still. Amos saw the hurt and pressed harder. "I offered you good work. A proper shop could follow. Instead, you chose to trail after a woman this town stopped trusting years ago. Because you told them to." "I told them what happened." "You told them what protected you." A few heads lifted. Amos stepped down from the church platform. "You think standing beside her makes you brave?" "No." "Then what do you think it makes you?" Caleb looked at Etta. The whole town followed his eyes. "It makes me where I chose to stand." Etta could not answer that. She had spent years believing anyone who stood too close would sooner or later be pushed away, bought off, or ashamed. Caleb did not appear ashamed. He looked poor, tired, and fully certain. Amos reached into his coat and drew out a small leather purse. Coins struck one another inside it. He held it toward Caleb. "Take this. Leave town by sundown. There is enough there to feed your daughter until you find sense." June stared at the purse. Caleb did not. "How much?" someone called from the crowd. Amos kept his eyes on Caleb. "Enough." Caleb looked toward the road south. For one hard moment, Etta understood what the money could mean. Food. A room with a sound roof. Tools to begin again. June would not have to sleep behind a shed or in an old stage stop that no longer belonged to Etta. Caleb's daughter came before pride. Etta knew that. She leaned close to him. "Take it," she whispered. His eyes turned to hers. "Take June and go." "Is that what you want?" "What I want does not matter." "It matters to me." "Do not make your child pay for my name." Caleb's jaw worked. Then he faced Amos. "No." Amos gave the purse a small shake. "Think carefully." "I have." The town stood at the edge of a choice, though most of them did not yet know it. A father could buy safety by leaving a shamed woman alone, or he could show his daughter that some things were worth losing comfort for. Stay close, because what happened next would decide more than who owned an old stage stop. Amos lowered the purse. "You will regret that." "Maybe." "You expect her to save you." Caleb looked at Etta again. "No, that is not why I stayed." Before Amos could answer, a woman pushed through the crowd. Lydia. Her hair had come loose beneath her shawl. She was breathing hard from walking too fast. One hand supported her belly. In the other, she held a folded letter. Amos went pale. "Go home," he said. Lydia did not stop. "I asked you last night what happened to Mother. This is not the place." "You said Miss Wynn lied." "She did." Lydia climbed the first church step and turned to face the crowd. Her hands trembled, but the letter did not fall. "I found this after I came home." Amos moved toward her. Etta stepped between them. He stopped so close she could smell the tobacco on his coat. "Move," he said. "No. That is my daughter. And she is speaking." Lydia opened the letter. The paper was worn at the folds. Her mother's name appeared at the bottom in faded ink. Amos's voice dropped. "Lydia, whatever you think that says." "I know her hand." The crowd went silent. Lydia began to read. "My dear girl, if this child comes hard, do not let your father send Etta Wynn away. Etta has asked him to fetch Dr. Bell, and he refuses because of the cost and the rain." Amos turned toward the crowd. "My wife was in pain. She did not know what she wrote." Lydia kept reading. "If I do not live, it is not Etta's fault. She has stayed when others would have left. She has done all one woman can do." A sound came from Mrs. Cole near the steps. Not a word, just a breath breaking loose. Lydia lowered the letter. "Why did you keep this from me?" she asked. Amos's face had lost its color. "I never saw it. It was inside Mother's winter shawl." "I never saw it," he repeated. "Then why did you tell everyone Etta had been drinking?" Amos looked toward Tully, then toward the ranch hands. Neither met his eyes. "I was grieving." "So was she." Lydia pointed toward Etta. "You let the town bury her while she was still alive." The words moved through the crowd more strongly than shouting would have. People began looking at Etta. Not around her. At her. The storekeeper removed his hat. Mrs. Merritt began crying. Amos stepped toward Lydia. "Give me that letter." She drew it against her chest. "No." His hand lifted. Caleb caught his wrist before it reached her. No one moved. Amos stared at him. Let go. Caleb did. Slowly. Lydia took one step back. Then her face changed. The letter slipped from her fingers. Both hands went to her belly. Etta caught the paper before it touched the ground. Lydia! The young woman bent forward. A low cry escaped her. Amos reached for her, but she pulled away. Water darkened the dust beneath her dress. Mrs. Pritchard pushed through the crowd. It is too early, she said. Lydia gripped Etta's sleeve. Another pain took her, stronger, longer. Etta felt the young woman's fingers tighten until the cloth cut into her arm. Take me to the stage stop, Lydia gasped. Amos shook his head. You are coming home. No. You need a proper bed. I need her. Every face turned toward Etta once more. The old fear rose through her. The rain, the lamplight, a woman growing weak beneath her hands. Caleb stepped close, his voice meant only for her. Tell me what you need. The same words he had spoken when June was bleeding. Etta looked at Lydia. Then at the people who had doubted her. Then at the letter in her hand. Bring the wagon, she said. Heat water at the stage stop. Tear the clean sheets into strips. Caleb nodded and moved. Etta put one arm around Lydia. The next pain was already coming. The wagon reached the stage stop with Lydia on a bed of blankets. Caleb drove. Etta sat behind him with one arm around Lydia's shoulders. Each rut brought another sound from the young woman, low and frightened. June ran ahead from the porch. The water is hot, she called. Mrs. Cole brought more sheets. Mrs. Cole stood in the doorway with her sleeves rolled up. Behind her waited the storekeeper's wife and Mrs. Merritt, women who had once crossed the street rather than meet Etta's eyes. They did not offer excuses. There was no time. Mrs. Cole, keep the stove fed, Etta said. Mrs. Merritt, take Lydia's coat. June, bring the clean cloth from the trunk. Everyone moved. Amos reached the porch as Caleb carried Lydia inside. You will not shut me out, he said. Lydia clung to Caleb's coat. I don't want him in the room. Amos stopped. Etta looked at him over Lydia's head. You heard her. I am her father. And she has given her answer. For once, Amos had no power strong enough to cross a doorway. Etta closed the door. The back room changed quickly. The bed was pulled from the wall. Lamps were lit. Water steamed in the basin. Lydia's mother's letter lay folded on the small table where Etta could see it. She did not need to read it again. Its truth had already done its work. Mrs. Pritchard arrived while Lydia was between pains. She entered without knocking and tied on an apron. I have delivered more babies than you have fingers, she said. Then wash your hands, Etta replied. Mrs. Pritchard stared at her. Mrs. Cole held out the soap. The older woman washed. For 2 hours the pains came steady. Etta kept her voice low. She showed Lydia where to place her hands and when to breathe. She gave her sips of water and wiped her face. Caleb waited in the front room with June. Every so often, Etta heard him add wood to the stove. He did not pace outside the bedroom door. He did not ask questions no one could answer. He stayed near. That was enough. Near midnight, Lydia's strength began to fail. Her hands searched across the blanket until Etta caught it. I can't, Lydia whispered. You are already doing it. My mother died. The words came out like a child's confession. Etta leaned closer. You are not your mother. What if it happens the same way? It is not the same. How do you know? Because this time, Amos had not been allowed to decide when help was worth the cost. Because this time, women had come when called. because this time Lydia's fear had been spoken. Etta did not say all that. She pressed a cool cloth to Lydia's forehead. "Because I am here," she said, "and I am not leaving." Lydia closed her eyes. Another pain came. The room narrowed to work. Mrs. Pritchard stopped giving advice and followed Etta's instructions. Mrs. Cole changed the water. Mrs. Merritt held the lamp. Outside, the town gathered in small groups. Lamps moved beyond the curtains. People who had watched Etta be turned out of their lives now waited for news from the same hands they had doubted. Near dawn, a child cried. The sound was thin at first. Then it grew angry and strong. Lydia began to sob. Etta wrapped the boy and placed him against his mother's chest. "There," she said. Lydia touched his dark hair with one finger. "He's alive." "Yes. And I am." Etta smiled despite herself, very much so. Mrs. Cole turned away and wiped her face on her sleeve. Mrs. Pritchard looked at Etta across the bed. "You did well," she said. Etta did not answer. Praise could not return the lost years, but it did not hurt as much as she expected. She washed her hands at the basin. The water turned pink, then clear. When she entered the front room, Caleb stood at once. June was asleep across 2 chairs with her head on his coat. "Well," he asked. "Mother and son are safe." Caleb let out a long breath. Then he looked at Etta's face. "And you?" "I am tired." "That was not what I asked." "It is what I can answer." He nodded. Outside, the first pale light touched the street. Amos still waited by the hitching post. His hat was in his hands. Men who had once stepped aside for him now stood at a distance. Etta opened the front door. Every face turned. "Lydia is safe," she said. "The child is a boy." A cheer began near the storekeeper and spread. Amos closed his eyes. When he opened them, he climbed the porch steps. "May I see her?" "No," Etta said. The answer struck him harder than anger would have. "She asked for time." "She is my daughter." "She knows." Amos looked past Etta into the room, then back at her. "You saved her." "I helped her deliver a child." "You could have refused." "Yes." "After what I did." "Yes." He waited for Etta to make the moment easier. She did not. Amos looked toward the road. "I was afraid," he said quietly. "So was your wife." His face folded for one brief second. "I thought if I blamed you, then I did not have to." "Do not finish that sentence for me." He stopped. "You do not get to hand me your guilt, because it has grown too heavy." Amos lowered his head. "What do you want?" Etta looked back at the stage stop. The widow's notice still waited in Tully's pocket. Caleb still had no shop. But the town was listening. "I want the sale withdrawn," she said. "I want Caleb's room returned until he chooses to leave it, and I want you to say before these people that you lied about me." Amos's jaw tightened from old habit. Then Lydia's baby cried from the back room. When Amos faced the crowd, he looked smaller than he had beneath the church bell. "Etta Wynn did not cause my wife's death," he said. No one moved. He forced the rest out. "She asked me to fetch Dr. Bell. I refused. Then I blamed her to protect myself." The truth sounded plain in daylight. Tully removed the folded notice from his coat. Amos looked at him, tear it up. Tully did. Etta watched without relief. A torn notice was not the thing that mattered. The people were. Mrs. Merritt came first. "I should have spoken yesterday," she said. "You should have spoken years ago," Etta replied. Mrs. Merritt nodded, yes. The storekeeper stepped forward next. then Mrs. Cole's husband. One by one, they offered words that arrived late. Etta did not forgive them all at once. She did not tell them it was nothing. It had taken years. She simply stood in the open doorway and let them say what they had come to say. By noon, the road was empty again. Lydia slept with the baby beside her. Amos had gone home alone after leaving food, blankets, and no instructions. Caleb found Etta sitting on the repaired porch board. "I heard Amos offered to pay for a new wheel shop," she said. "He did. And I told him I would pay rent like anyone else. You do not have enough." "Not yet." Etta picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "The carriage room behind the stage stop is larger than the cooper's shed." Caleb stayed very still. "The roof needs work," she continued, "and one door hangs crooked. I have seen worse. There is space for wheels, maybe 2 wagons. 3 if I move the old feed bins." She looked at him. "You already measured it." "With my eyes." "That is not measuring." It was hopeful estimating. Etta looked toward the road. "You and June may use it until you find something better." Caleb's voice softened. "And if we do not?" Her fingers stopped at the thread. "Then the door will need a proper sign." He smiled. This time, Etta did not hide her own. Spring came slowly to Red Willow. The stage stop opened its front room again, not for coaches, but for women who needed rest, children with scraped knees, and travelers who knew a clean bed when they saw one. Caleb's wheels stood in neat rows beneath the carriage roof. June painted the sign herself. The letters leaned, but Etta would not let Caleb straighten them. Months later, Lydia brought the baby for a visit. Morning light filled the room. The child slept in a cradle near the stove, while June folded clean cloth into uneven squares. Caleb sat beside the cradle, repairing one loose slat. Etta washed her hands at the basin. The front door stood open. People came through it without lowering their voices or looking away. Caleb set down his tool and held out a cup of coffee. "No sugar." Etta took it and stood beside him. There was work waiting. A room needed sweeping. The baby would soon wake. Someone had left a basket on the porch. Ordinary things. Etta looked around the full room and understood that no one had given her a place in Red Willow. She had opened the door. And this time, people had learned how to enter.